It's a ham radio.
The Cadillac of ham radios.
Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Ham Radio, a Stranger Things podcast. We've got a great episode for you today as usual, but first, we have a little housekeeping to take care of, and I'm going to turn it over to Jasmine to let you know where you can find us on social media and where you can listen to the podcast.
Thanks, Ashley. You can find us on Instagram at Ham Radio Media, all one word, on Twitter at HamThrough, on YouTube at Ham Radio Media, or using our handle HamRadio1983. We also have a Discord you can join, which is linked in the description of this episode. If you have a fan theory or question you want to share, you can email us at hamradiomedia@gmail.com. Ashley also has a fanfic on AO3 entitled Stranger Things College, which is also linked in the description. The podcast is available on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and much more. If you like the show, please consider leaving us a rating or review. We have a lot of totally tubular stuff coming up, so be sure to follow us on social media to keep up with the podcast and all of our new content.
Hey everybody, Ashley here, and I would like to welcome you all back to another episode of Ham Radio, a Stranger Things podcast. Jasmine was unable to record today, so it's just me. But don't worry, I have a totally tubular episode in store for you today, as I will be talking about the Stranger Things Season 4 Epilogue, specifically the foreshadowing that is littered throughout the epilogue, and what I think it all means for what's to come in Season 5. So, you may be sitting there asking, okay, well, why are you just now talking about the Season 4 epilogue? I mean, didn't Season 4 come out like almost 3 years ago? Yes, it did. But the reason that I'm talking about it now is because actually this is a topic that Jasmine and I have been wanting to discuss for, it seems like, forever now. We just haven't really been able to with our script series and then other things. 2024 was a very busy year for us, both personally and professionally and with the podcast. But when Jasmine the other day told me that I would have to be recording today's episode solo, I was just going through our list of episode topics to be covered, and I saw this one on there, and I just knew that this is what I wanted to cover, because I know it's something that I certainly have wanted to talk about for some time now. And so I'm like, you know what? Might as well just go ahead and do it now, and while it's still relevant, because I don't know when Season 5 is going to come out, but I'm hoping that this episode is covered before it comes out, before it no longer is relevant. So I felt like now was as good a time as any to do that. So what even is an epilogue? And why is it so important? According to Studio Binder an epilogue is a scene that takes place after the climax of a story. It serves as a conclusion to the story's events and shows us what becomes of its major characters. They are meant to give clarity to the narrative, not to resolve themes. In short, it's a non-essential part of a story that gives resolution to characters or plot. Basically, it just puts a bow on everything and just ties it up. That's why the epilogues typically will come or set in the future in a TV show or film or literature, a book, anything like that. Okay, so now that we know what an epilogue is, I'm going to give you a little refresher on what happened in the Season 4 epilogue, because, it's been a minute since I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, but even if you have, it never hurts to have a refresher. So, that being said, I'm going to give it to you. I've tried to be as detailed as possible, but, we're not all perfect, and I'm sure there are going to be some details that I may not have missed here, but if you're that really concerned about if I've missed anything, go watch it for yourself. But this is just a quick speed through version, recap of it. So here we go. So we pick up 2 days after 11 and Vecna's mind fight. We see a massive exodus of cars leaving Hawkins as the Surfer Boys pizza van enters Hawkins. Mike, Will, 11, Jonathan, and Argyle observe in awe and horror the constant droves of people fleeing their beloved town, as the camera pans up, giving us our first look at the damage that has been inflicted upon Hawkins. Helicopters swoop over several large plumes of black smoke wafting into the sky. Once in town, they pass several homes and observe families packing their things and drive past Hawkins High, which is now serving as a disaster relief headquarters, if you will. Next, they drive through downtown, where soldiers and police give directions, and get a look at the library, which is now in shambles and has black vines covering it. Then they ride past a church, now donning a banner on the side with the Bible verse, "Do not become overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good," from Romans 12:21. A TV reporter declares that this catastrophic event was a 4.7 magnitude earthquake. Meanwhile, at the Wheelers' house, Ted is watching this news report and quips that the news these days is indistinguishable from the tabloids when the reporter says that some people in Hawkins believe this could be a portal into hell itself, which Karen agrees with Ted. Karen then takes a box filled with toys and other items for the disaster relief drive outside where Nancy, Steve, Robin, and Dustin are. Karen hands the box to Nancy, who notices a toy from her childhood, a stuffed animal rabbit. Karen tells Nancy she can keep it if she wants, but Nancy declines, saying that it will be of more use to someone else, and then promptly places the box inside the car trunk. Suddenly, Karen randomly asks if someone ordered a pizza. We then see the Surfer Boys van pull up into the driveway, and out hops Mike, 11, Will, Jonathan, and Argyle. We get a happy, albeit brief, reunion. Nancy and Jonathan, much to Steve's chagrin, hug, and Nancy tells Jonathan that this wasn't an earthquake, to which Jonathan replies, yeah, he knows. He knows a lot more than she thinks. Karen tells Mike that he is never going on a vacation again, or college for that matter. Elle and Dustin share a hug, and she's curious as to where Lucas is. Dustin looks confused at first, but then recognizes that the Cali crew isn't aware as to what has happened. We cut to a hospital room where Lucas and Erica, who is sitting in a chair behind him in the background, Lucas is reading from Stephen King and Peter Straub's sci-fi novel, The Talisman, to Max, who is in a coma. Moments later, Elle, Mike, Will, Nancy, and Jonathan arrive in Max's room at the hospital. Elle, Mike, and Will embrace Lucas in a hug. Elle apologizes to Lucas and asks if the doctors know when she will awake. Lucas says they aren't sure, but that she clinically died for a minute, and it's a miracle that she's even still alive. Elle then walks up to Max, grabs her hand, and begins to search for her telekinetically. Meanwhile, Dustin, Steve, and Robin are dropping off boxes of donations at the high school. Robin runs into Vicky, and the two band nerds chat whilst making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and Vicky reveals that she and her boyfriend Dan have just broken up. Steve watches them glee and amusement as he folds clothes. Dustin is passing out cups of water to people when he notices Eddie's Uncle Wayne putting up a missing poster of Eddie. A tearful Dustin gives Wayne Eddie's guitar pick necklace and tells him he was a hero for the town despite it hating him and that he didn't die in vain. Nancy, Jonathan, Mike, Will, 11, and Argyle have made it to Hopper's cabin so that 11 can lay low. He checks to make sure the water still works, finds cleaning supplies, and puts everyone to work cleaning up the cabin. Hopper and Joyce then show up and share a tearful reunion with 11, who searches for Max through her void, but her search is ultimately unsuccessful as she can't find her in there. Will reveals to Mike that he still has a connection to who he now knows to be Vecna / after his possession in Season 2. Will knows that not only Vecna is alive, but he's hurting, and still has plans for world domination. The hairs on the back of Will's neck stand up as the skies turn cloudy and particles begin raining down upon Hawkins, killing the plant life in the process. We get a montage and see Eric and Lucas observing the sky from inside Max's hospital room. Everyone at the gym has also taken notice. Holly thinks it's snowing, but Karen doesn't look so sure, and everyone at the cabin, minus Argyle, follows the particles to a hillside and see a dark cloud in the sky with flashes of red lightning. So some items that stood out to me in the epilogue while I was watching it were water, mushrooms, cleaning supplies, Holland and Karen Wheeler, a Coca-Cola bottle, and the Talisman. So with the water, we have two distinct scenes in the epilogue that involve water. I'm of course talking about the scene with Dustin passing out the water to people in the gym, and then when Nancy and company are in Hopper's cabin cleaning, and Nancy goes up to the sink in the kitchen, turns on the water, and says, "Oh, water still works." Something to that effect. And I don't think that the Duffer Brothers, as smart as they are, would have put those scenes or those pieces of dialogue into the epilogue if they didn't feel that they weren't important. Water makes up 60% of the human body and is not only necessary for hydration, but it plays a crucial role in bodily functions such as removal, temperature regulation, and nutrient transport. Water is also involved in digestion and absorption of nutrients. It also carries oxygen to cells and lubricates and cushions joints, protecting them from damage. Water helps to protect tissues in the human body, including the spinal cord and other vital organs, as well as contributing to healthy skin through hydration. Being hydrated even leads to increased energy levels, improved mood, and better cognitive function. Beyond humans, all living things need water to survive. Water is also a resource for cooking, sanitation, drinking, agriculture, and industry. Clean water is vital for economic growth and poverty reduction. Even more important, water is crucial for adapting to the impacts of climate change. My biggest question then, as it relates to Stranger Things, is with the Upside Down now merging with Hawkins, how will people survive in an environment being taken over by one that doesn't have water and doesn't seem to need water like our world does? We don't know a lot about the Upside Down, and I think that is intentional, and the Duffers have repeatedly stated that we will get answers to what the Upside Down is and more about that world. But a key thing that has remained consistent throughout the seasons of the show about the Upside Down is that it's cold and it's void of water. And as I just read here, could the temperature thing in the Upside Down actually be more because there's no water there to keep the temperature regulated? Like, how does the life in the Upside Down, how does it survive without water? I mean, we see no water whatsoever, not even in the version that Henry first enters after 11 first pushed him there. There's no water there at all, not even in the cloud of particles in the sky that Henry first encounters, or that we see him encounter. There's electricity, but no water. I also wonder too, like, how does Vecna poop? I'm kidding. No. But seriously, how has Vecna, still a human, been able to survive in that environment for like 7 years now without any water? Because again, these things I just read off to you, hydration, I mean, that's explains his terrible skin. I mean, yes, the environment is a foreign environment to the human body, but again, it is void of water, and we need water for good skin, because the hydration element for our cells and to keep our blood pumping through our bodies, we need the water. So again, how has he been able to live in that environment? Yes, I know, like, he is clearly adapted, but there also doesn't seem to be any food sources in the Upside Down either. which the human body can go longer without food than water, but you certainly can't go without food for 7 years. And you definitely can't go without water for 7 years. And so that in and of itself, for me, raises the question, is he really alive or is he really dead? So, these are some key questions. Now, do I expect the Duffers to be able to completely answer all those questions? Time-wise, no. But there's always the hope that they can get in at least a morsel of information. Or maybe it's just one of those things that just is, and we just have to accept it. There's no real rhyme or reason behind it other than it's just a part of this world. And Vecna Henry is a very powerful individual and managed. But nevertheless, Will survived without any water and presumably nothing to eat for a week when he was in the Upside Down, but just barely. If Joyce and Hopper hadn't gotten there and rescued him when they did, he would have succumbed to the elements. I think mostly from hypothermia, because we know that he was, by the end of that week, he was frigid. He was cold because him just not being used to that environment. And again, no water. Maybe no food, but again, like water, I think it's going to be very, very important in season 5, and it's going to be interesting to see how the citizens of Hawkins who have chosen to stay and remain behind are going to be dealing with that. The military or the emergency task force, yes, they can have water brought in for people for drinking, and yes, they put their heads together. They can utilize it for things like cooking and bathing, things like that. But my biggest concern is not necessarily that. I really think it's the climate change portion of this. How much is the upside down environment? How much is that going to affect the natural world in season 5 on the effects on the plants and the animals and of course the humans, because they all work together. So again, water, I think, very important. I don't think those two scenes would have been in this epilogue if it weren't so. Now for the mushrooms, I cannot take full credit for this because I actually recently, a few months ago, watched this on a YouTube video, and I don't always like to use YouTube videos as my main source for evidence or what have you, because I think most of those videos on YouTube are clickbait, but every now and again you'll run across a YouTuber who is a big fan of a show, who really loves a show, and who is bringing evidence and sources to back up their claims and their theories. And this is one of those. The YouTuber is called DLA Alternative. The host is Brandon, and I will be sure to include the link to his video on the mushrooms in Stranger Things season 4 in the epilogue, whether Argyle is out there observing. I'll be sure to link that video in the description of today's episode so that you can go and watch that for yourself. It's a really good video. It's very well researched. And very well done. It's a little over 40 minutes, give or take, and I think Brandon just does an excellent job with it. So I'm not going to go as in depth here in my discussion of the mushrooms as Brandon did, but again, I'll link it and you can go watch it for yourself so you can hear all of what he has to say, because he brings up more than I am going to talk about. But yeah, so the mushrooms that Argyle is inspecting are, ones with the red tops with the white spots on top of them, which when I was younger, I used to think they were called like umbrella mushrooms because of the shape and the color. That of course is not what they are called, not even close. They're actually called Amanita muscaria, commonly known as the fly agaric or fly amanita, but I'll be referring to them as the fly muscaria throughout this discussion just because it's easier for me to pronounce and for continuity's sake. But I'll mostly be focused on the life cycle of these mushrooms, as pointed out by the DLA alternative, and how, like, the theory is that all 5 seasons of Stranger Things are in and of themselves a reflection or more like a metaphoric expression of the life cycles of these particular mushrooms. These mushrooms are commonly known, you would probably have definitely heard this, called shrooms. I mean, they've been used as drugs and LSD and MK Ultra things. That's typically what they're commonly known for. And that's what I thought was being represented here or depicted here in the scene, was just like, in a creative way to tell the audience, like, hey, mind fight between Vecna and 11 is going to happen in season 5, and they're both through MK Ultra, through, at least we know 11 definitely through drugs because of her mother and all that. But we don't really know yet about Henry. But it can be assumed. But then I watched the DLA Alternatives video, and it completely changed my thoughts on it. But I just want to give you some characteristics of this mushroom. So despite its striking appearance, the fly muscaria is a highly toxic, highly poisonous mushroom. If congested, it can cause symptoms such as hallucinations, synesthesia, euphoria, dysphoria, and retrograde amnesia due to its psychoactive compounds like ibonic acid and mucimol. It can also cause agitation, gastrointestinal upset, upset stomachs, and seizures. However, despite being poisonous, the fly muscaria isn't deadly if ingested. In fact, it is eaten in different parts of the world, including Asia and India. So, like soups, things like that. So, yes, you can eat this mushroom, but it might cause you to trip out a little bit. So the fly muscaria has 6 life cycle stages in total. The first one is when the mushroom is mature, spores are released from the gills under the cap. Stage 2, spores begin to grow, forming fine threads, also known as hyphae, which spread and form mycelium. Mycelium groups together to form a young mushroom. Then stage 4, when the mushroom is small, it's protected by a special coat called the universal veil. The mushroom grows in the presence of food and water. Then 6, the veil breaks as the mushroom grows, leaving remnants of the universal veil on top of the cap. So I think it's fair to say that stages 1 and 2 are definitely seasons 1 and 2. And then I would combine seasons 3, 4, and 5 in with stages 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, Brandon at the DLA Alternative, he did not do that. He actually broke it down even further than what I just did. And some really good things about each of the stages and how they reflect each season of Stranger Things in them. But me personally, again, this is not to take anything away from Brandon or his theory, but I think that you could definitely group seasons 3, 4, and 5 into the final 4 stages, especially 5. I think 5 is definitely stage 6, or at least, that the ending of season 4 is definitely stage 6. But again, brilliant theory from Brandon at the DLA Alternative. I highly encourage you to go watch his video on that and subscribe to his channel if you can. He has some really amazing theories other than just this one that definitely, in my opinion, are not clickbait. He's very thorough. He's a good presenter, and he really loves Stranger Things, and he really does take the time to do his research. So again, go watch all his videos. He's really cool. You'll really like him. And then the cleaning supplies. Now this one, I know you're thinking, what is cleaning supplies? What does that have to do with anything for season 5? Well, the main foreshadowing that I get here in the scene I'm talking about here with the cleaning supplies is when Nancy and them get back to Hopper's cabin, and she finds some cleaning supplies and hands it to him and says, "Oh, cleaning supplies." But the main thing I take from here is the callback to season 3 when Vecna, acting through the Mind Flayer, was forcing the Flayed to drink chemicals, including cleaning products, to break down their bodies and turn them into the meat monster. I think this could indicate that he will do something similar in season 5. Otherwise, I'm not sure why they would even have Nancy say the line cleaning products. And it's just the way she says it as well. It's like she's stating the obvious, but I just think that if it wasn't important for what's to come, they wouldn't have had her say that. Or if they didn't want us to pick up on that reference there. So I don't know if this refers to like something Vecna's going to try something similar in season 5, because again, I don't want to see why else they would have this in here, because I think like with the water scenes, like, yes, generally people know that H2O is vital for survival of all living things. And when Nancy turns on the sink in the kitchen at the cabin, like, yes, we can see that the water is running. We see that it works. And here with the cleaning supplies, yes, we see that they are cleaning supplies. Why are you telling us this? Why are you literally telling us all this? The general public's going to know all these things. And I think it's part of something bigger. I think it's the Duffers telling the audience, like, hey, pay attention to this stuff, because it's going to be important. It's going to come up later in season 5. So there's the cleaning supplies. And then we get to Holly and Karen, who were there at the very end of the epilogue. And, Holly's like, oh, mommy, it's snowing. And, like, we know that Holly is going to play a much bigger role in season 5. I mean, they recast her. And we know from the behind the scenes teaser and other behind the scenes things that she's going to be pretty prevalent in season 5. And I believe that Karen is too, because Karen seems to spend more time with Holly than her other kids. I think Karen is definitely going to have much more screen time. She already seems from behind the scenes to be more important to season 5 than she was certainly last season. And like Holly, when she says, "Mommy, look, it's snowing," I mean, I believe Holly's had like maybe 3 lines throughout this show, and that's been one of them. But she's always seemed to have like this sixth sense in a way. I mean, she's always been able to see things that the adults around her haven't really been able to. I think of in season 1 when she's in Will's house when her and Karen are over at Joyce's house, and Joyce and Karen are in the kitchen talking, and Holly notices the lights flickering down the hallway, and she goes to inspect, and she winds up in Will's room, and then I guess the Demogorgon or whoever is coming through the wall, and fortunately Joyce noticed that Holly was not there, which Karen did not. That's really bad, but that's the way it happened. And Joyce snatched her up, and unfortunately, nothing happened to Holly at that point. And then I think another time it was more noticeable was in season 3 when Holly, Ted, and Karen are sitting on the Ferris wheel at the July 4th festival, and Holly notices the trees are moving, and Ted and Karen, anybody else, they don't seem to notice, but Holly does. So it's not like it has completely not ever been there. It's just been more subtle, cute moments that people, I think the audience, maybe always thought were kind of just throwaway lines, but now we kind of know that they're not, that they're going to be a bit more important in season 5, again, because she's been recast and seems to be a big focus in season 5. With Karen, I don't know what's going to happen with Karen. I assume it's going to be connected with Holly, but I'm really, really worried about the Wheelers in season 5 in general. But just real quickly, I actually do think Ted, we're going to see Ted a little bit in season 5, just because he is in this epilogue and he does have some lines. So I feel like we could see Ted Wheeler in season 5. Now, what's he going to be doing? I don't know. I mean, Ted already doesn't really do a whole lot, doesn't really seem to add a whole lot to the narrative in general. However, I do think that could have a potential to change in season 5, only because of the Holly thing. But Ted has shown on-screen affection the most to Holly. I mean, we've never seen him interact with Nancy or Mike in a loving, affectionate way, a physical way, like he does with Holly. And so it's been theorized that Ted is going to die, and that could be. Nancy did say, like, when Vecna showed her the future. I mean, she was very vague about it, but she said, he showed me my mom and Holly and Mike. She does not mention Ted, but I don't necessarily think that means he is going to die in season 5. This means that he's not there. And it could be very well a situation of, as Jasmine and I have theorized on here, of maybe Ted is like, I'm not leave Hawkins. I can't, for the sake of my family or what have you, I'm gonna get out of town. I mean, I don't really think like abandoning his family, but I do think things are gonna get really bad in Hawkins, and maybe upon Karen's insistence, maybe it's something where like Karen recognizes the truth of everything, or learns what's going on from Nancy and or Mike, and tells Ted, like, for the sake of our family, I'm gonna need you to leave Hawkins to go to Nana's house or somewhere, I think it could be a situation of that. Again, I don't necessarily think that means he's going to die. I mean, on the one hand, I think it's because if Vecna really was truly trying to intimidate Nancy there and scare her there, I think he would probably show her all of her family dead, including Ted. And I know that Nancy and Ted don't appear to have a very close bond, a close relationship like she does with Karen. But I mean, I do think that Nancy cares about her dad. But on the other hand, you would definitely not be wrong to, if you made the assumption that Vecna showed her the people that are most important in her life. And in terms of her family, you can definitely say that Karen and Mike and Holly are very important to Nancy, more so than Ted is, because she has more interactions with them. But again, Ted, I do think we're going to see Ted briefly, or however long, but I do think we're going to see him a little bit in season 5, but I don't know if they're going to kill him. I know a lot of the fan base is not really going to miss him, but at the same time, I mean, Ted really, if you think about it, doesn't really do much for the narrative. I mean, he's a very good comic relief. It's like he's just there. So I don't think the fan base would also be heartbroken if he died. I also don't think they would be upset if he didn't. So they would definitely be more upset if Karen died, or something bad happened to Karen. So I think, unless it's going to play some role in whatever happens to Holly or anything like that, I don't really foresee the Duffers deciding to kill him off just for the sake of doing that. I mean, that's not really their thing, but we'll see. And then the Coca-Cola bottle. Again, you may be asking, what does this have to do with what's going to happen in season 5? Well, I'm not really talking about the Coca-Cola itself per se, but the glass bottle. That's what I want to talk about. The glass bottle that Elle finds underneath the bed when she's cleaning up her room in the cabin, and it brings back that memory of her and Max in season 3 playing spin the bottle. So, like, we know Elle is using this to try and find Max in her void, but sadly to no avail. So I did a little research on glass bottles, because apparently, like, most things out there symbolize something or have a deeper meaning, and so do glass bottles. So glass bottles symbolize purity and clarity because the transparent nature of the glass lends itself to the ability to see through things. It also means fragility. Glass is known for its delicate nature, so a glass bottle represents something that is easily broken, but also impermanent. I think the Duffers are asking us, the audience, to see through what is being shown to us when Elle is looking for Max in her void. To think beyond and see the unseen, while simultaneously telling us through creative imagery of Elle spinning a glass Coke bottle that what has happened to Max and where she isn't permanent. The symbolism of a message in a bottle is mystery, hope, and the potential for a story to be found. I think in a way the Duffer brothers are sending their own message in a bottle in this sequence. And look, this scene has always been hard for me to watch. Like, I love it, don't get me wrong, but it's still kind of sad because Elle is trying her best. And even like she thought, bringing up, good, happy memories would help her to break through. And, she obviously wasn't able to do that. And it's just so sad. Like when you see the camera continue to zoom out and she's just in her void calling out for Max and to no avail. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to watch. Now, I think like by now, I think it's maybe not pretty obvious, but like a probability percentage, I'd say it's 97% certain that Max's consciousness is with Vecna. Just based on what Dr. Brenner has told us about what happens when Vecna kills someone. He takes everything they are and everything they ever will be, their memories. And I mean, he was successful in killing Max, albeit very briefly for a minute, but he was successful in that. And I think that's where Max is. Now, I think that's where we're going to see her a lot, is in his mindscape. What a scary thought that is. But yeah, I think that's where she is. And I think that if Eleven wants to find Max and free her, that's where she has to go. She's got to go inside Henry's mind, which is definitely going to be, I feel like, a challenge, especially because now he knows that Eleven is alive and she's back in Hawkins. Like he's not going to let that happen. Just that easy. But yeah, that's what I think is going on with Max. And I think this glass bottle is just, in a way, it's a message in a bottle. It's sending us a message of that, Max is in a fragile state. Yes, she's in a coma, but it's not going to be a permanent situation. And I feel like if it were, they would have already just killed her off at the end of season 4. But the Duffer Brothers have both stated that initially that was kind of their plan, but then they changed that and they felt confident that they had a really good plan moving forward in season 5, and they had to keep her alive. So yeah, could Max be the bridge? I'm going to leave that there. Could Max be the bridge? So the Talisman, written by Stephen King and Peter Straub, is an coming-of-age novel about a 12-year-old boy named Jack Sawyer who embarks on an epic quest that walk from the seacoast of New Hampshire to the California coast to find the talisman that will save his dying mother's life. Jack's journey takes him through the territories, a dangerous medieval reality that parallels our own, where most people from his own universe have analogs called twinners. He must defeat an enemy who wants to destroy him and his mother. So the talisman obviously comes from the scene in the hospital. Lucas is reading the talisman to Max. Now, I heard that originally in the script, Lucas was not reading the talisman to her. He was reading Superwoman to her, I believe, like the same one that Max read to 11 in season 3. And they changed it to the talisman during filming. Now, I think a big reason that for the change was because around that time, the Duffer Brothers had signed on to executive produce and direct a miniseries about the Talisman with Steven Spielberg. So, that could have something to do with it. I mean, the possibilities here are endless. However, the Talisman, I've read it. It's a really good book. And it definitely, there's a lot of similar elements to the Talisman as in Stranger Things, especially about the territories, which you could interpret that as, the upside down. So I think there's a variety of reasons as to why they changed it at the last moment there. And I think it also could tell us about something that's happened with Max. So, but what exactly is a talisman? It's an object like a ring, stone, or piece of jewelry that is thought to possess magical or supernatural powers. Talismans are believed to bring good luck, protection against harm, or avert evil. they also are intended to heal or harm individuals for whom they are made. So, right off the bat, I think, supernatural. I think 11 could be the Talisman of Stranger Things. When you think about it, she does have supernatural abilities. She can heal people. She brought Max back to life at the end of season 4. I mean, I know she's not an object. However, she has been treated like an object, as we've seen so many times throughout her life, whether it be inadvertently or intentionally. Dr. Brenner or even Mike or, the kids, I think of season 3, like, just relying on her for so much to thwart off entities from the upside down and what have you. I mean, I think it's safe to say that Elle, in and of herself, is a talisman. And we've seen her go up against evil multiple times and be successful, except, I guess, maybe not as successful at the end of season 4, but she's going to come back in season 5. She's Phoenix Rising. She's going to be successful in season 5. I think here also, by this definition, you could also place Henry/Vecna/1 as a talisman, because he wants to harm individuals. And I don't maybe think that he is maybe not so much a talisman in that regard, but I think his clock is a talisman. Because, I mean, no, he did not make that clock, but it's in his mind. And we know he uses it before he killed Chrissy, Fred, Patrick, and Max. So we know that clock is very important to him. So I think in and of itself, that clock is also a talisman, but unlike 11, that clock is intended to harm individuals, harm and kill individuals. So I think that the talisman, that book, and the object, I think, definitely big foreshadowing pieces here for what's to come in season 5. Again, like, if you haven't read the Talisman, I highly encourage you to do that. Now, it's a thick book. It's big, but it's good. It's a good book. It's got a good story to it. It's a little bit weird at times, a little bit trippy, but again, go read that book, The Talisman, if you haven't. Especially, I think, like now, after you've heard this, maybe you will want to go read it and learn more about it to prep you for season 5. So, I just want to touch on a couple scenes real quick that stood out to me in the epilogue. And this is not so much like a foreshadowing thing. I just really like these scenes in the epilogue that I want to talk about. For the first one being the cabin scene where they're cleaning up. I really love this scene because it's very profound, in my opinion. Subtle, yet profound. Because when I reflect on what Vecna told 11 earlier in episode 9 of season 4, he said that Hawkins would burn and fall along with the rest of this world, and that he would be the one left there to pick up the pieces. However, I think that the creators, the writers, showrunners here are showing us in this scene that it's not he, Vecna, who will be picking up the pieces. It's them, our heroes. And yes, Hawkins very well could burn and fall in season 5. I'm not saying that it's not. I think things are going to be very bad for Hawkins before they get good. But I think, like with the banner on the church, that's the side of the church, the scene when Mike, Will, 11, and Jonathan are returning to Hawkins, I do think that good will overcome evil when it's all said and done, and they, our heroes, will be the ones who will be restoring Hawkins. And so I just love the implications there, seeing them all cleaning up, for the mess of just, like, number one, that cabin being there, sitting there for like over a year without anyone living there, but also because of the mess that was left in from when Vecna threw the meat monster, almost destroyed it. And so just to see them all pitching in together to clean up this home. This is a home, and it's Hawkins. Hawkins is these people's home. And just to see them going through and cleaning it up and restoring it to, the way it was before, but with those scars, if you will, of destruction, like Jonathan and Nancy outside boarding up the windows where the windows used to be, and then on the roof where the meat monster crashed into it. Again, I think there's just so much there to tell us like what's to come with our characters in season 5. Then the upside down merging with Hawkins scene. Again, I love the way that scene was shot. Very powerful, very moving scene. But I also like it because it made me think of, this looks like a parallel of the scene in season 2, episode 1, when Will saw a vision of the Mind Flayer, when he's going to the bathroom and he thinks he hears like this storm, and he goes and opens the front door and he sees a rush of wind comes through, and he sees the Mind Flayer. He didn't know that at the time, but he would eventually come to know that. And it's a huge red storm in the distance, and then this spider-looking creature, aka the Mind Flayer, appears, and it's a vision at that time. He's not really actually seeing that, but he's experiencing that, like a waking nightmare. This happened before it possessed him, except this time in season 4, when they're all standing up there on that hillside and they're seeing big, the dark, when we see the dark cloud in the sky with flashes of red lightning, coming out of it. This time, this isn't a vision. This is real. This is real life. And it doesn't look exactly like it did in season 2, but I do see a little bit of a parallel between those two scenes. Because again, that was, I think, looking back on it in retrospect, with this context in mind, I think that in season 2, it was maybe Vecna trying to send Will a message of, I want you to tell people what you see and what's to come for Hawkins. But Vecna wasn't able to achieve that then because Eleven closed the gate. And then thanks to the Russians who were trying to open the gate in season 3, he came back and was just messed everything up and led us to where we are now. But yeah, I think in retrospect, with this this context in mind, I think that Vecna gave Will that vision, not so much to scare him in that moment, but to be like, hey, this is what's coming. And now we get this literal realization of that vision from season 2, right here in this moment in season 4. And only this time, it's not a vision. It's real. It's real life. So those are basically my biggest takeaways from the epilogue, those core elements. And I just want to end this episode today by saying, first of all, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope that you got something out of this episode that maybe you didn't realize before. But also, I just want to say this. Look, I know, Jasmine knows, we've talked about it before on the show. I get it. The ending to season 4, not the best one in the show so far. It definitely was not as good as the preceding seasons. I don't think anyone can deny that. I think a lot of it had to do with just the way it was edited, and it did feel a little bit choppy with the 2 days later thing, and it just felt really rushed so they get to this climactic ending with the fantastic epic version of the Stranger Things theme song. And I love that. I love that part, especially. So no, I'm not here to deny that it's not, comparatively, it's not the best. But I didn't want to have this episode be about it sucked. No, because there were some good parts in it. And that's really what I hope that you take away from this episode. Maybe it causes you to think differently of the epilogue next time you watch season 4, or rewatch. Maybe it causes you to go back and want to rewatch the epilogue and just view it from a different lens or through a different lens. There's actually some important things here. We just have to look past how kind of wonky the pacing of it was. And again, I'm not here to deny that it was a wonky pacing. I acknowledge that it was. It wasn't as tight knit, neatly woven an epilogue as we've gotten in the past. But I think it was the appropriate epilogue for season 4. I mean, the Duffers have said that season 4 wasn't supposed to feel like a complete ending, because it's basically supposed to feel like part 1 of part 2. You know, season 4, season 5 are supposed to go hand in hand together. And so, therefore, I think that just setting up for not only a new season, but an even better ending to season 5 and an even better epilogue, if there is one, to send to season 5. So, therefore, I do think it was the right kind of epilogue for season 4.
And that's our show. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe and tell your friends. Our theme music is provided by Neon Knights. Thank you for listening to this episode of Ham Radio, a Stranger Things podcast. Please join us next time, same dial, same time.
Over and out.